This is Andy Gutierrez from StarWars.com, and you are listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z. This is the podcast you're looking for.
This is Ashley Eckstein, Ahsoka Tano from Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi with Dan Z.
Joining us today for a cup of coffee to talk about Infested, episode 13 in season 1 of Star Wars The Bad Batch, is one returning guest to Coffee with Kenobi and one individual who is brand new to Coffee with Kenobi as far as being on the show, but has been a long-time member of our community and certainly a pillar of our Star Wars community. Of course, I'm talking about Mary Perdue. Mary, welcome to the show properly.
Oh, thanks, Diana. I appreciate it.
Of course, and as listeners know, Mary was a part of the CWK meetup at the beginning of July at Disney Springs. We had the best time. It was fun hanging out with you and Blake and Aaron and Dave and Jason and everybody who joined us. And you ate chocolate-covered bacon.
Yes.
Describe that for us.
Probably the last time I eat chocolate-covered bacon. The presentation was amazing.
Yes,
They bring it out in this covered, clear covered dish, and smoke, and they pull it off, and all the smoke rises, and here are these, I don't know how many, 8 maybe pieces of bacon standing up. It looks like Stonehenge. But it was interesting. It was that sort of spicy kind of chocolate, I guess you could kind of say more like you would have in a Mexican restaurant type of a thing.
Right.
So I guess since that was sort of from South America, with being Jock Lindsay's Hanger Bar, maybe that's the reason it had the little spice to it. But
yeah,
it was good. It was interesting. Once is enough.
Once is enough. I can understand that. Well, once apparently is never enough to have our other host on the show. Of course, I'm talking about Mr. Tom Gross.
Oh, hello, everybody. It's great to be on to talk Bad Batch again. And boy, pikes and spice and all the good stuff tonight.
That's right. Spicy chocolate bacon or spice from the pikes. Who knows? Let's start out like we always do, with the letter grade of the episode and just overall thoughts. And Mary, we'll start with you. What's your letter grade and overall opinion of Infested?
Wow, you had to start with me, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah, of course. I think my letter grade is a B+. I enjoyed the show. It was more like a Clone Wars type of a show. Although, we all keep saying that Bad Batch just seems to be season 8 of Clone Wars. But there are some things as we talk later that maybe could have been done better, or we could have seen other things. But overall, we enjoyed it. It was a sort of a sit on the edge of your seat kind of a show a couple of times. I think there were sometimes when we were a little anxious about what might happen. So a B+.
Fair enough. And Tom, what about you?
My initial reaction, I went with a B, which I also did last week. I had a B on that episode, but I changed my mind after our conversation. So I start with initial reaction. I've got pikes and spice, a daring heist, a little horror, and a lesson learned. So that's what I took initially from this episode of Infested. Very good.
I thought this is the least amount of notes I've taken on an episode of The Bad Batch so far. It's a very compelling episode. It's got some great scares and some great suspense. I'm going to give it a B- because I don't think there's nothing that stands out in screams to me about the episode to make it truly unique. But that doesn't mean it's bad. I thought it was very entertaining. B- is certainly very respectable. Mm-hmm. So let's find out why we gave the letter grade. So we did. Tom, right off the bat, and I mentioned this on Facebook Live, but we have in media res, we get a reference to, why didn't Sid tell us about this drop zone and all those gun darks that were there? And then Tex says, well, Sid often leaves information out. So one, why do they keep going? And two, what a nice thing to see Star Wars being Star Wars and making references to things that we may or may not ever find out about.
Yeah, these little missions. I think we're only seeing a little bit of what they do. Sounds like that because it always seems like, or not always, but many episodes start with them commenting on some mission that Sid has just sent them on. But I have to say, we've kind of been talking about throughout this entire series of discussing Bad Batch, the intent of a character like Sid. Is she good guy? Is she bad guy? Is she, completely neutral in the middle and just plays every side? And I was starting to lean toward that she's involved in some ways of the rebellion, but it's instances like that. And you always bring it up that the tech lines, and there are a few tech lines in this one that I absolutely love. And it was this is the first one right off the bat. It is not the first time she's left us. Left out key details, Tech says. And it makes me question her intent. I don't know. I was starting to, as I was saying, I was starting to lean toward she had involvement with a potentially early cell of rebellion and whatnot. But it's situations like that where she just sort of throws them into areas for the sake of money or anything that I don't know. I really think she's a middle player, and I think we're just supposed to enjoy her. But I don't know. I mean, things can change. We still have a few episodes to change our mind on that, but I'm back to the middle on her.
Okay. To me, that just sort of adds to who she is as a character. If she's omitting information to her, then that either means it's not important because she thinks the Bad Batch is more than equipped enough to take care of it, and clearly they are. I don't think there's anything particularly malicious, but I also don't think that she just doesn't waste time. She just doesn't waste time. And neither does the episode waste time, because right away we go into Sid's bar and Mary. The place is packed. We see a ton more people than we ever have in Sid's bar, even when Omega was playing Dejarik with everybody. And then we get to see Pikes. So what went through your mind, Mary, when you saw the bar like that and seeing all the new characters in this?
Well, I thought it was quite interesting. We never have seen Sid's bar, parlor, whatever she wants to call it, crowded like that, except for when Omega was playing Dejarik, and they brought in the crowd for that. But it's always been just, what's their name, Bolo and Ketch. Those two guys, we see them all the time. And then all of a sudden we're seeing all of these armored people, or who are these people and why are they there and where is Sid? And it was interesting. We always kind of feel like Sid is in charge and in control, and now all of a sudden the guys have been off on a mission. Like you said, how many missions have they gone on? We don't know. I feel like there's a lot of time and missions in between each one of the shows that we're not told about. We're just kind of given, maybe a little word or two that we know, like you said at the beginning of Facebook Live. We just get a little inkling of what they're doing when they're not actually on our TV screen. Mm-hmm. And so seeing all of these people all of a sudden in the bars, like something's going on and what's happening. And I'm not sure that they really were ready to see so many different people in there, and that their reaction was maybe a little slow about what was going on. Yeah, they're still newbies in this world. I mean, they're so used to being told what to do, when to do, and how to do it. I think they're still so new in trying to maneuver their new situation, even though they are going out on these missions. So I think that kind of threw them for a little bit of a loop, seeing so many people in there and these people in uniform and what's going on.
Right. I love that. And I like that what this show continues to do is it puts us in the position of, we feel the same way the Bad Batch does. We're just as confused as the characters are. There are a lot of people there. We don't really know what's going on. We eventually walk into Sid's office, and it's been taken over by a gangster whose name is Roland. Yes. I mentioned this on Facebook Live, but I think the voice of Roland is about as smooth and as calculated and is fantastic as you could possibly listen to. It was so good. But Tom, tell us your initial reactions to Roland.
Yeah, well, of course, don't like him because he's in Sid's office. As much as I question the intent of Sid, at least we knew what we get from her, and when he uses the word like, well, she's, what does he say? He says she's gone
Out.
or out. Yeah. And it's like, what? Okay, what does this mean? And so, she's out is what he says. And, one thing that I thought was, I don't know, I thought visually, I really liked this and the sound effects that went along with it. When I forget exactly the sequence of it, but what it leads to that I really enjoyed is when every one of the members of Clone Force 99 drew their weapons all at the same time.
Yeah.
But I think there are two of those instances in this show. One is later on, but this one is, I don't remember now, but something is said. And I mean, I remember Hunter bringing his forearm up and he places the pistol on top of his forearm and everyone behind him draws weapons at the same time. And it was such a cool moment. But yeah, it definitely sets, a sense of upsettedness. That's not really a word, but definitely, there's something going on here that isn't right. And I'm trying to think, where else have we seen someone of this race before?
You're thinking of Vizago from Star Wars Rebels, probably.
Well, Vizago crossed my mind, and is he the same race as the thug in Mandalorian when they go to the rebel prison and it's that group?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. That's what I thought.
Yes. The muscle. Yes.
Yeah. A Deveronian. Is that how you pronounce
Deveronian.
it?
That's correct.
Yes. That's right.
Yeah. I had to look that
up. That is correct. Very good.
But he calls it his territory. He calls it his territory. And that's so upsetting.
You kind of get the impression by the way he's carrying himself that he's not like a big boss. At least that's the impression I got. I feel like he's just sort of someone trying to make his way and create sort of a mark for himself. That's certainly the vibe that I get. But then they leave, I still have jobs for you. And Hunter's like, we'll think about it. But pretty well that he's not going to. They leave. And then they start talking about, well, what do they mean Sid's out? So Tech starts being Tech and trying to explain what the possibilities are without any emotion of any kind. Then Omega, Mary, comes up and says, why aren't we going to help her? Sid is there right away, so there's really not much time for any sort of worry or concern about where Sid is because she's right there. But Sid notices it before, without giving away the ending. Mary, talk about that moment and what we learn about Omega here. Or is it just kind of reinforcing what we already know?
Well, I think Omega has a good heart. I don't think she's been corrupted by outside people, what's going on in the world. She is coming from a fresh perspective, even a child's perspective. Even though probably they are about the same age-wise as far as the clones, because they all had accelerated growth. She did not. I don't know if that has something to do with it as well. The guys are much hardened. They've seen what's going on in the world as far as the wars. And so I think they have a different perspective on who to help, who not to help, that type of thing. Who do they think deems their need for help? But Omega just says, we went to her when we needed help. Now she needs help. We should help her. And of course, no one knew that Sid was standing in the Marauder back there, listening to everything that was said. And, then she says, well, at least one of them, at least you care for me. But I just think that's Omega. I think she has an empathy and a sympathy for people that is childlike, but is also very wholesome.
I agree. And someone mentioned on Facebook Live, might have been you. I think Ross mentioned it too. But I think it's cool that Omega is basically the conscience or the heart of the Bad Batch. Yeah. And she is always willing to speak her mind from a very unique place from someone of her age. Sid's plan is to steal Roland's spice and get him into trouble with the Pikes. This is some of the. I guess it's perfect that I'm going to ask you this, Tom. Knowing what we know about Sid, the fact that she wants to get her thing back, but she doesn't mind getting them in trouble with the Pikes, so we know are deadly. Where would you put Sid's alignment in the Dungeons and Dragons roster? Is she neutral? Is she neutral?
Putting
lawful?
anybody. I'm going with chaotic neutral.
Explain what that means for people who maybe don't play.
So chaotic neutral is you follow no rules, and neutral would be you play both sides. But a lawful neutral person would play both sides, but would find a way to fit into the rules or the laws of things. Anytime you deal, I guess the way I look at it, anytime you deal with the Pikes, you're moving into a chaotic kind of sense, because I guess you know what their rules are, but when you willingly start to deal with the Pikes or start putting yourself in the line of fire of Pikes, and Pikes and spice go together, and so if you're dealing with the Pikes, spice is going to be involved. And we know from season 7 Clone Wars, we know from Han Solo what kinds of things the Pike will do for spice. Mm-hmm. And to make sure that there's control to the trade of spice, because they seem to be the leaders in that.
There's definitely a level of greed, but I place Sid way higher on the I don't know if kindness is the word, but more if you're gonna put your life in someone's hands, I mean Sid would be a good choice, certainly compared to the Pikes. If she believes in you and what you're doing, because we've never seen her kill anyone or put anyone in harm's way. They couldn't handle it.
Tech might say differently.
Yeah, Tech might disagree. Well, I mean, she knows they can handle it.
I don't know if you could go so far as to say neutral, good, chaotic, neutral, good. You can really start getting into some the weeds here, but right. But yeah, I mean, she might be in that range. Like I said, I don't know, some of the things that she does or puts the place she puts them in some cases here makes me question, the goodness of her. And it always seems to be about the money and about her place.
It does. Interesting. We're going to revisit that, Tom, at the end of the episode.
Alrighty.
So they're going to go into the old mining tunnels to sneak into Sid's office. She's got a secret passage down there. And then we're told we go into this underground tunnel, and they've got these mine cars that are elevated. And, you start to think of a lot of things, right? A lot of different movies, a lot of different stuff. Mary, feel free to talk about what you noticed as they first went down into these mine tunnels.
Well, it just reminded me so much of Temple of Doom. And that is not my favorite Indiana Jones movie. Matter of fact, that's number 4 on my list.
Me too.
But that was the whole vibe between what was down below them to being in these mine cars that maybe aren't the best anymore. Obviously, they couldn't turn on the motors because of the Earlings that I'm sure we'll talk about here in a second. But of course, the guys didn't know that. And then the little chase afterwards, it was just so reminiscent of Temple of Doom. And of course, other people mentioned on Facebook Live other video games or other movies that had that same type of chase scene or sort of that deal. But it was very Temple of Doomish, and I thought, oh, this is not going to be good.
No, it was
like I have a bad feeling about this.
Yes, that is definitely applicable for this. Good catch. The suspense is wonderful. I feel like the Bad Batch does horror really well.
Yeah.
Yep.
They I mean, I know, Tom, did you feel like you were holding your breath at all during this episode?
Well, we weren't quite underwater, but certainly the apparel was there. And did anybody mention that when Wrecker drops the flashlight, that reminded them of Peregrine took and the bucket in the Mines of Moria, where it
They,
fell.
on Facebook, they
like,
did.
Did they? Okay. I figured. But yeah, I mean, the horror aspect here is clear, and it definitely works because, you first of all, that something's coming because Sid sets it up. 2, all the red lights, the screeching and the screaming, and you have the peril of being up so high you can't see the bottom. Oh my gosh. Did either of you also note that she puts Muscles in the car behind her, but then she does what Muscles does and pumps the car, and Tech and Omega I thought that was great. And Wrecker gets off of it all exhausted, and she doesn't say a word.
Yes. No, there's a lot of things that are discussed. I think it's important that Sid is the pilot, or does the muscle power for this. Because I feel like this puts her more in a different sort of a camp because she's willing to do the work. She's trying to retrieve, take care of business herself. And maybe she feels like she's the only one who can handle it, but she doesn't say that. And she certainly has no problem speaking her mind, as we've clearly seen over and over again. So she's willing to do it. Wrecker does it because he's the strongest. And then the music in this, Tom and Mary, is just so good. The music continues to weave a lot more atmospheric depth to these stories, the emotional beats and the resonance of it are really spectacular. As you said, Mary, Star Wars is so good at that. They're always the masters of that kind of a thing. But then, we've got these great things. Don't wake the hive. That's why we can't turn on the motors. That's why we have to kind of pump it literally old school, which to me makes it much more scary because you can't get away fast. As Tom, you mentioned, you're high up enough. And then Wrecker, of course, drops the lights. And if you look down at the bottom when he drops it and the light is slipping around, you see these things crawling around. And to me, it reminded me of like a zombie flick or something like that.
Sure.
Oh, yeah. Didn't think about that.
Yeah, pretty cool. So let's go ahead and take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about another trip through the mine and a lot of green squishy stuff. This is Coffee with Kenobi.
This is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Coffee with Kenobi.
With travel beginning to open up and Walt Disney World and Disneyland reaching full capacity, this is the time to book your Disney World vacation with MEI and Mouse Fan Travel. Their signature service and expert advice will help clients maximize their vacation, time, and dollar. I use Becky Menken and MEI's incredible services all the time, both for family and for travel for the show, because of their no cost, no obligation quote when you use the service. Plus, they proactively adjust a booking if the rate goes down. Literally, I will wake up one morning and I will get an email from MEI saying that the price went down, and I will get a refund sent to my credit card right away. I don't have to do anything. They help your family enjoy everything Galaxy's Edge and the Disney theme parks and the cruise lines have to offer, can help you plan every detail, and always share invaluable tips. That's for Walt Disney World, Disneyland, the Disney Cruise Lines, or other cruise lines. It doesn't have to be Disney related. They literally can help you plan a vacation anywhere on the planet. Be sure to go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel and sign up for a free no obligation quote to any of the Disney theme parks on the planet or any vacation that you have in mind. You'll have the best vacation possible and help out me and Coffee with Kenobi in the process. We are back and we are getting out of the mine. There's a ladder to go back into the office. And then there's a lot of cool stuff going on. In the meantime, before we get to the actual stuff with the spice and getting the spice and trying to put the pikes and rolling at odds, Mary, we get a very extended side mission of some of your favorite characters and Mantel Mix and a lot of hijinks with a stolen pet. Talk to us about this and what stood out for you.
Well, the whole thing with Ruby, and I actually had to go back and really even look up who Ruby was. Where did we see Ruby the Lizard first? Mm-hmm. And it was back in episode 7, Battle Scars, when we met Rex. And it was their mission that they were finishing up at the beginning of the show, and they had stolen this lizard from the Rokians or whoever they were, and Roland was the client, And so so you kind of get this idea. Okay, that's how they know Ruby. I had to look it up. I didn't know.
No, I forgot about that.
I did too. And so, but Ruby loving that Mantel mix, and Bolo and Ketch, being the diversion or the distraction to get Roland and all of his guards out of the parlor cantina, so that all of them could come up, the team and Sid could come up into the back room and get the spice. It was so cute. I mean, it was just like out of a cartoon. It was like a Bugs Bunny or something cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just drop the Mantel mix and Ruby trail behind, eating it as she goes. But then those two are just hilarious. They can't do anything quite right, and it ends up that one of them gets their finger bit because they're not giving her the Mantel mix as fast as they should, and they drop her. And then he's like, what are we going to do? I'm going to run, and they take off. So, but the one part that I thought was really kind of interesting was how Roland reacts with Ruby. Like, she really is important to him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's faking that. I think that she is a beloved pet, and he was very concerned with her being gone, and he, to the point that he's telling the guys, go find these two idiots, and he tells Ruby, we're going to kill them because they took you. But I mean, all through it with Ruby, she's just kind of this thing that he can, this pet that he relates to and he emotes to and he cares about. And it's an interesting side to him that I think we see a little bit later on with, after the Pikes.
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like you cover that really, really well, Mary. So probably not too much more I even think to say, but Roland is humanized a little bit. And I think that's important. The way, of course, most people know or believe or have a theory that you can judge a person by how they interact with animals, right? By how they relate to pets, especially dogs or cats. But yeah, I think maybe dogs even more. So I guess it's hard to say. But it does humanize him, which later when he's in peril, maybe it makes you care about him a little bit more than you would have because of what happens with Ruby. But we don't have a lot of time for that because Roland realizes that he's been duped. He races back into his office, which is actually Sid's. And the 6 crates of spice are gone. So then we have Hot Pursuit. Yeah. A great classic chase sequence. Star Wars is, of course, one of the things that Star Wars is so great about is featuring epic chase sequences. And this one, Tom, is a little bit different because you've got the danger below. Mm-hmm. They're using their carts, trying to do it silently. And then here come the Pikes with their engines ablazing. Talk to me about what stood out in this before we wake the hive.
I thought this was so much fun, and you're right. Star Wars does a great chase scene, and this one's different than anything I think I've ever seen, because you have these suspended kind of gondolas or whatever they're called. Gondolas. I'm trying to think of did I just say the sandwich? Yeah. Anyway, but they're trying, and so you have the suspension over this deep pit where there's supposed to be a hive of something, and so you've got that, and then you've got the suspense of they're trying to be quiet, and then shooting ensues, and so yeah, they've got two of these mine carts coming up behind, motorized with the armored soldiers of Roland's, and you've got Clone Force 99 trying to quietly make their way along this suspended pass. A couple things I thought were really cool. First of all, anytime Wrecker breaks out that like semi-automatic Uzi, whatever that thing is, blaster, he just, I just think that's so cool. And Sid goes, I told you no blasters. And one of them, I think it was Wrecker, says, tell that to them.
It is. Yeah, I think it is Wrecker.
Yep. And then is it Hunter who jumps onto the one behind and kind of beats them up a little bit and then sends it backwards toward the other one? And then as it as it takes off, Hunter leaps back into their cart, which I just think is really cool.
It is Hunter, and I wrote that down
Yeah.
as a feature thing, and that should have been in my top 5 too. Oh my goodness, yeah, that was a great action sequence.
I thought that was so cool the way he did that, or the way they put all that together. I just thought the whole heist thing was really cool. But this was a fun action sequence that gets kind of frustrating because they don't actually succeed, which I think is where you're headed.
Well, yeah, there's that, and then I feel like, Mary, the fear factor is amped up significantly because the Pikes don't seem to care that there's any danger. They probably have no idea that there's any danger of any kind. But then here comes the swarm. We finally get to see the swarm. Mm-hmm. We see these monstrosities. We never really get a good close look at them, except for when the light shows up. I really love the idea, again, of light. I'm not talking about the end with the flash bomb. I'm talking about the notion that the light is what scares them away, not the blasters, but darkness can envelop you both internally and externally if you let it. Light shows you a beautiful metaphor in the midst of a lot of chaos.
That's cool.
Yeah. Mary, anything you want to say about that?
I think Star Wars does that the best. I mean, that's the hope. That's the light. That's just like later what Omega says about Roland. Light pushes back the dark. And it continues to push back the things that we are scared of, or that frighten us, or that perhaps are going to do us harm. And Joel Aaron and that crew with Lucasfilm and the lighting they do on all of these shows is amazing.
Absolutely phenomenal. They eventually break through. Wrecker closes the door. Of course, it waits to the very, very end. It's blocked. You get splatterings of green goo. I mean, it's clearly blood. Yeah, it was pretty gross. And Wrecker, again, you mentioned this earlier, Tom, he's so winded. And he's especially then he's just covered with this stuff. I find that kind of fascinating. But it's a pretty quick celebration because the Pikes have basically said, we need the spice. Roland doesn't have it. And then they say, you and your family will truly experience what pain truly feels like, which is pretty gruesome. Now, Tom, we've dabbled into pretty serious darkness in this show before, but now it's coming not from the Empire, but from gangsters. And that's kind of a different level of frightening for our heroes.
Yeah. I mean, again, I mentioned the Pikes from other places that we've seen, especially in Solo, and we see what their minds are like on Kessel, and they, how they diminish the spirit of Wookiees. The Wookiees still have the strength to work in the mines, but have almost no spirit until Chewbacca shows up. And so when he says that, those images come through my mind of what kind of pain the Pikes can put out there. And so I mean, I go to that and I'm like, man, I know Sid didn't bring the Pikes in. This is all Roland's doing because he's trying to impress his mom, Issa Durand?
Yes.
And so it's not Sid's fault, but nonetheless, Sid has put them into this position where now they're going to have to deal with the Pikes one-on-one. And not just that, but I hope I'm not jumping too far ahead, but the Pikes say, you know where the spice is? You go get the spice and you leave the kid here. That's the other spot where they bring up their weapons so fast.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it is, and like the spirit that they have for her and I my mind was a little split on this because I thought, they're doing that for Omega as the child, but I'm not convinced of that anymore. I think they do that because she is one of them. Last episode, she said to Hera, he's my brother. They're my brothers. That's why they have that reaction.
I agree, and I think they don't even have to be mutually exclusive because I think they're both happening. Because there's like that's our companion, that's our brethren, that's our family, and also we're protecting her as well. I mean, that's a pretty good group of older brothers to have. I would
Yes,
say.
it is.
Because the Pikes are bullies; they're absolutely bullies,
Yes.
but they also have this coldness to them, and I mean, I would consider them chaotic, lawful because they're evil. But they clearly have a code that they honor. That doesn't mean they don't kind of fudge it a little bit. But they definitely are, they mean business and they will stick to their word, but they will also stack the deck in their honor or in their favor, not their honor. So, we return the spice, the issue is resolved. We're going to keep Omega here. I was a little surprised that they agreed to it, Mary. Why didn't they just have a shootout then and there and take care of it?
Well, I don't think the guys really know much about the Pikes yet. And from what they could see as they walked into the cantina where everybody was laying out, all the guards, and they could very plainly see that somebody was there and not playing around, that they were serious about what they were doing. And even though Bolo and Ketch had told Sid that the Pikes had already taken care of Roland, obviously they went back to the bar way too soon because they walked right into it, and there they come out with Roland, in handcuffs or whatever. But I think, again, it just goes back to the Bad Batch, our clones not knowing what's going on in this bigger world yet, and maybe not even having an idea who the Pikes are and what they are capable of. We as viewers, we have seen them. We've seen them. We saw them back in season 7 with the Martez sisters and Ahsoka. We saw them in Solo. So we know as the audience what they are capable of. But do our heroes know what they are capable of? And so, and Sid turning around and telling them, let me take care of this. She knows what they are capable of. She knows how to deal with the Pikes, or at least she hopes she knows how to deal with the Pikes. And I think she knew there was no way they were going to get out of there alive if they did not do what the Pikes said to do,
right.
And which was to leave Omega. On the other side of that too, I think all of them feel very comfortable that in many ways Omega can take care of herself. She is very capable of doing what she needs to do to get to where she needs to go. And so I know they were worried about her. And Sid, absolutely, this showed us how Sid feels about Omega. She was taking full responsibility. I got the kid into this. I'm going to get her out of it, which I thought was great. I thought that was great character development for Sid.
I agree. It's the first time we've seen that. Yes, we definitely need to see that to care a little bit more about her, because the nicknames are very fluent throughout this thing. I've certainly made no secret that I feel like they've kind of been played out a little bit. That's just how she is. That's how she does stuff. But she says, I like you said, Mary, I got Omega into this. I'm going to get her out of it. She is not only does she get her in and out of it, but when they get back into the tunnels, Tom, she leads the charge with Wrecker. Like, she goes down there, puts her life in jeopardy constantly. She doesn't complain about it. She doesn't treat anybody any differently than before. She's all business because she wants to rescue Omega. I don't know about either of you, although I'm guessing you probably feel similarly. I don't think she's doing this out of honor or duty from a place of working in the underworld, but I think it's because she actually has a good heart and she actually cares about her friend, and she doesn't want anything to happen to her because she does take responsibility for that. To me, that takes the chaotic out of it, Tom, but feel free to disagree.
No, I don't. I think you're right. I didn't see it that way. I saw it as she's owning this. She lost her parlor, her tavern, her spot. She lost her place of business to somebody, and she's upset about that. And on top of all of that, it's put friends of hers, or at least colleagues of hers, or whomever, in peril. But I totally agree with you in the fact that she definitely has created this relationship of respect with Omega. And, and so she feels responsible for that aspect. But no, it was definitely notable that she took the lead on so many different things in this mission, which I was kind of surprised of, and so that changed my mind that changed my thoughts on her in a few different ways. But yeah, I don't know that I still am not convinced that it changes my thought that she would go outside of, she would break rules to make things happen. In fact, there's a part of me that feels like her taking the lead on this is part of the chaoticness of her. Like, we don't know what to expect from her. She'll do just about anything. She'll send them into the Gundarks, or here she takes the lead on this because she wants what she wants back. So, I do think it's honorable of her to do it and to take the lead. And I love it. You Muscles, come on. I mean, I don't, what? This week, the nicknames didn't bother me as much as they have the last couple episodes.
Because we're so used to them.
I guess so, but yeah. But so when she's like, "You come on, let's go, Muscles," and he looks over, of course, we get the typical poor Wrecker. I can say this, I feel like every single episode, because there he is up high, looking down, going, "Oh boy." But he does it as he always does, and they rappel down into the pit.
That's right. She a lot of good thoughts there. I love that. They go down to take care of business to get the spice, and then basically we go back and we see Omega and Roland. They're basically in prison together out in the open in this bar. And Omega has this another great moment where she has this way with people who are on the cusp, right? She has this way of seeing what's in them and really holding sort of a mirror to their soul and basically saying, "Why do you do this?
Yeah.
What's your deal?" And then Roland says, "You take what you want. That's the Duran way." And, but Omega sees, I don't know if she sees through it, but she tries to get him to look at things differently. Mary, talk about the conversation the two of them have.
Well, ask me that again.
Yes.
Put it in a little bit of a different way.
Of course, I would be happy to do that. So when Omega and Roland are talking, she's basically asking him why he lives his life the way that he does. Why did you take over, Sis? Why are you doing this? It's obviously not working out very well for you. What's wrong with you, dude? That's basically what she says.
I agree with that. I think, again, she's seeing the good in people, although she does get a little stern with him, especially when she says that, his mother is a criminal, and you're a criminal, and why did you do this? But again, Ruby is around and close, and Ruby crawls up on Omega's lap, and Roland sees that, Ruby likes Omega, and I think he softens again. I think we see him. I think he realizes that this is more than just a child, and that she has some insight, and that, hey, Ruby likes her. It's sort of the same thing that Omega says about Roland. And again, like you said, we're seeing that other side of Roland, that maybe he is only doing this because of his family. That
right.
Does he really want to be a criminal? Is this really something he wants to do? Is this his calling?
And honestly, it wasn't until this moment, seeing him with the little creature was fine. It was cute. Certainly there was something potential there. But this was the moment, Tom, where I felt like, okay, maybe there is something somewhat redeemable about this guy. I mean, he's certainly not somebody that you're going to babysit, but there's a little more of a redemptive quality, I think, because, like Mary said, she's able to see the good in people, or force them to look at the good within themselves, even when they don't want to.
Well, yes. I saw this also as, it's every single episode. I'm always looking for who is Omega going to learn something from this episode, and this little scene is it. And you know what? When you talk about Roland and a redeemable quality, I go to, it's all from a certain point of view, because Roland says, my philosophy, it doesn't say it specifically, but he goes, take what you want. And she mentions the word criminal, and in his smooth voice, he says, "You make that sound so undignified."
Yeah.
And it made me sit back and go, to him, there's this is the way of life. And you have to think, growing up in in a smuggler's world, that would be the way you do things. But the lesson I think that she learns here, and it comes to fruition at the end, is when he says to her, "Well, that's what happens when you meddle in other people's business." And essentially saying that's why we're where we are, because we've meddled in someone else's business. And I think that's the lesson that we see at the end, that she learns from him. But I love these little moments. Hera has had them, and we mentioned them many times throughout this series, this season. But it's learning moments with Hunter. It's learning moments with Echo. It's learning moments with Hera, and here with a criminal. And I think that Mary, when you said she sees the best in everybody, it doesn't matter whether it's a child or a clone soldier or a smuggler or underworld. She's going to learn something from that individual. And I don't know about you guys, but that right there, when I think of Omega, that right there gives me hope.
Well, yes. Do you think that's part of what makes her special? Like each Wrecker has his special thing, Hunter has his special thing. Do you think that part of what makes Omega special is her empathy and her ability to see other people? And even going back to the first show when she puts her hand on Crosshair and says, it's not your fault. I wish you wouldn't do it or whatever. She knows the turmoil. It's like she's an empath. It's almost like she's force sensitive. And that's, a whole other speculation kind of a thing. But It's like that's the kind of feeling that we get with her, is that she can feel these things about people.
Right. And I'm still undecided on like the unique special talent situation, because Boba Fett is of the same vein as them, right?
Yeah.
But he doesn't have anything special about him besides the fact that he's incredible with fighting and weaponry. But maybe that's just the skill that he has and has acquired. And then with Omega, is it that, or is she just incredibly kind-hearted and empathetic? I don't know. I really don't know. I almost hope that she doesn't. I almost hope it's just her, not because of a modification, but just because that's who she is. But I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, I see it as her childlike wonder, her childlike wonder in the world.
Yeah,
and that's how we see you, Tom.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
my youthfulness.
That's right. So then we go back. We got one more. We got two more moments of excitement. The card, of course, falls on accident. It looks like Wrecker and Sid are going to be overwhelmed by this tidal wave of monsters. What do they call the Earlings?
Yes.
Earlings. Yeah. Tech gives all the details on that.
Yeah, that's right. And this is the first time we've seen Earlings, by the way. But then Tech, speaking of Tech, he throws down this flash bomb, which I mentioned earlier, the idea of light as a metaphor for overcoming darkness. And it's beautiful. Like the lighting on this, Mary, you mentioned Joel Aaron and everybody who works on the show, but the lighting on this, the way it bursts through and eradicates all of the threat. They get the spice. They're able to go back and get Omega back while Wrecker is still covered in green ooze. It's just a lovely bit of relief.
Well, and I think even the interaction between Wrecker and Sid, we really haven't seen Sid talk to our guys as equals or one-to-one. And I think a little bit of this, we've seen her, even though she's still calling them their little pet names that she has for them. I think she is, through this adventure, through this mission, she is dealing with them more on a one-on-one, peer-to-peer type of a thing. And especially as the two of them were on those spice crates coming up, and all of a sudden those Earlings are coming up all around them. And, Wrecker is my favorite. He was my favorite from the beginning. He's still my favorite. Bless his heart. he just seems to always get into the wrong place at the wrong time. But and when he came up and he was like, I'm okay. Phew, he was like, okay, I'm all right. I made it through that. But, and of course, Sid has a little snarky remark, see muscles, I told you we could do it, or, whatever it was that she said. But I think this whole episode has given a little bit different of a dynamic between Sid and the guys. Omega, we know she likes. Omega, we knew that from when she was, doing the Dejaric and the and clearing out the debt and all that stuff. We learned that a couple of episodes back. She sees something special in Omega too. But I think maybe this is the first time that she has actually thought of the guys as being equals or peers, or at least more than just mercenaries.
A good call. Yeah, that's a great idea. I hadn't really put that together, and that makes sense. Yeah, you kind of get that feeling, don't you, that there's going to be a little bit of a change in their dynamic, as groups, and now potentially as peers. Omega, then they get Omega back. The Pike's like, no, we still get basically, we're good, but Roland, they're not, and they turn with this knife. You don't really see knives very regularly in Star Wars. You see lightsabers naturally and things like that, but actual pointed deadly metal is not as common of an occurrence. So it kind of makes it even more terrifying to a degree. Of course, the Pikes have that deadly voice. And Sid tries to stick up for Durant and says, you sure you want to pick a fight with his family? Do you really want that kind of heat? And still saving face, they turn around and they cut off one of Roland's horns. I feel like there's some symbolism here. Quite honestly, I'm not sure what that is
either. That was a question I had written down. What is the symbolism of that horn being cut off?
Right. I guess there has to be something, and I would wager that there's something familiar about it, because it hurts him, it stuns him, but you don't get great pain like if you're losing an appendage or something like that. So to me, initially, you just think, well, he's disfigured now, and maybe that's a badge of honor to have the horns. Maybe they grow through time to indicate maturity for this particular species, and to not have that means you're basically disfigured or scarred. But he still maintains his dignity and his self-respect. But you get the sense that he's got a different way of looking at the world, or you'd like to think that. But Tom, what do you think? Anything about this?
Yeah, after that happens, Omega walks over and says, "Are you okay?" Which is interesting. This guy's put everybody in danger. He's called this his territory, all of this. And Omega, after that conversation she has with him, walks over, "Are you okay?" And Roland says, "It's a small price to pay." And I feel like he's completely humiliated. My impression was it was just what you were alluding to, Dan, is on a racial side, maybe even family side. Losing a horn is a sign of humiliation. You lost a battle, you lost a part of who you are. But I think this is the lesson learned that I mentioned in the opening. He says to Omega, as I mentioned already, that's what happens when you meddle in other people's business. Well, this is his lesson that he learns here. And so, yeah, I think, I guess that's all I really have to say about it, other than, he definitely changes here.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a symbolic physical manifestation of the fact that he is different. He's not leading life the same way he did before, because he's been hardened by the reality of what happens and how other people are affected. It could have been his family. It was very clear, the Pike said it could have been your family. He certainly doesn't see Omega as family, but the fact that she sticks up for him, I think it helps him. While he looks different, I feel like he's going to be more whole in the long run as a result of this. So it's an interesting way to balance it. As they're leaving, first round's on me, and Record's like, you owe us a lot more than that. And she says, don't push your luck. But then Hunter says to Omega, why did you stick up for him? And Omega says, Ruby likes him. Maybe he's not all bad. I love that, Mary. What a great way to end this episode.
Yeah, I think so. And again, I think it just goes back to Omega seeing the good in people. Like, Luke saw the good in Vader, Anakin, and all of those kinds of Rey seeing the good in Kylo Ren. It just goes back to that thought that there is good in the people who we are meeting, and Omega having again that thought, that empathy, that way of seeing people. She just feels like there's good in him. And again, a lot of it was how he was treating his pet. How was he treating Ruby? And so, and he said the same thing about her. So I think there was a little bit of a mutual respect there because the lizard liked them both.
That's right. And how many times in your life have you said that sentence?
Never.
Never. This is the first.
Yeah.
Tom, any last minute thoughts? Either of you, any last minute thoughts on this episode? And does anybody want to revisit their grade? I'm pretty good with mine. I think it's a very fun, suspenseful episode. Not one I necessarily put in my top 5, but that's not really that important. It did what it needed to do. We learned a little bit more about Sid. We met a great new character in Roland, and get to see more of Omega being herself. But I'm still going to stick with my B-.
Yes, my B+ is good.
Okay. I'm sticking with my B. One thing that really stood out to me in this episode is how Omega stands up a couple times and is quote unquote the adult in the room. I feel like she's starting to make some shots, call some shots, and she's learning to trust herself a little bit more, which is why I think Hunter asked that question at the end. He's trying to understand her a little bit more. But I think we're starting to see Omega come around. And my only thing about this episode is why now? Why, when we are just a few episodes away from the conclusion of season 1, is this the episode we get? Like, I feel like we just came off of we're getting momentum with Crosshair and really starting to feel the conflict with the Empire. And then now it's like another break. I don't know. It's just me feeling like, I think if I had let down in this episode, I was expecting more of the Empire in that story to grow. So I've no doubt we'll have a sprint to the end with these last 3. But I thought this one really probably could have gone maybe 2 episodes, could have gone pre-Ryloth.
Interesting. Mary, any last minute thoughts?
Just sort of the same thing that Tom was talking about, really thinking that these last 4 episodes would be like a 4-episode arc and would be more the Empire and Crosshair after them and that type of thing. But as Tom was just talking, something came to me that perhaps this episode, again, speculation, which I know we don't really like to do, but maybe this episode with Sid and her connecting more with the team, maybe that's going to come into play as our clones are getting ready to fight for themselves against Crosshair and against the Empire. She keeps saying, I've got your back, or, I have your secret, or we keep getting that statement, how she knows who they are. She knows that there is a price on their heads and Omega's head, and that she's keeping them safe. And so will that play into these last 3 episodes? I don't know.
Time will tell. We don't have much time to go to. We've only got 3 episodes left.
It's crazy.
Oof. Wow. Hard to believe this all started on May the 4th.
Yeah.
What a long, strange trip.
Listening to Coffee with Kenobi, you are, with Dan Z, the podcast you're looking for. This is Yes.
As we near the end of the show today, I want to thank each and every one of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to have a cup of coffee with me and for helping to spread the word about our Star Wars family we've got here at Coffee with Kenobi. Be sure to tune in Monday nights at 8 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live at www.coffeewithkenobi.com/live or www.facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi and have a cup of coffee, tea, or any beverage of your choosing with me as we continue the conversation. To join us in the CWK Cafe, which is our Facebook group, and share your Star Wars thoughts, comments, reviews, and opinions in a family-friendly, spoiler-free place that is also drama-free, go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/community and be part of the conversation, talk about this week's show, or just talk about some Star Wars. We have a lot of fun and you'll make some new friends as well as catch up with longtime friends along the way. I also want to thank all of the new and longtime members of the CWK Alliance and let you know how much I appreciate your help and encouragement. If you want to join the CWK Alliance, go to www.cwkalliance.com and sign up today. Not only will you help out Coffee with Kenobi, but you also get access to CWK Pour-Over, the exclusive weekly podcast not heard anywhere else. It's a great way to support and help out the show, and 10% of your monthly contributions go directly to the St. Jude Children's Hospital to support the incredibly important work they are doing to help these brave children and their families. Plus, contributors at the CWK All-Star level can watch a video podcast of CWK Pour-Over hosted by me, Tom Gross, and Corey Clubb. Feel free to reach out anytime if you have any questions. In addition to being part of the community on Facebook, please don't forget to visit our website at www.coffeewithkenobi.com for Star Wars news, announcements, reviews, videos, and so much more. If you have a question for me or just want to share your thoughts on the air, feel free to email me at danz@coffeewithkenobi.com and I'll share them on the show. You can also connect with me on Twitter at Mr. Zaire, MRZEHR, or on Instagram at DanZareCWK. There are also a lot more ways to connect with me and Coffee with Kenobi on social media. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Give us a like on Facebook at facebook.com/coffeewithkenobi. Check us out on Pinterest or subscribe to our Coffee with Kenobi YouTube channel. On our YouTube channel, you can find Facebook Live video, different interviews throughout the years, highlights of video coverage throughout the Coffee with Kenobi history, and the audio podcast itself. You can order my book, The Star Wars Book, which I co-wrote with Lucasfilm's Pablo Hidalgo and Cole Horton, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Books A Million, Walmart, or anywhere books are sold. You can also find my writing on Coffee with Kenobi's website, as well as StarWars.com, where I am an official blogger there, and on IGN, where I contribute occasionally to articles about Star Wars, as well as other popular culture topics. If you are considering starting a podcast or a blog, let me know how I can help you get started and make your creative vision a reality. Be sure to check out danzmedia.com and we can get the process started. I am also available to come to your school, conference, business, or organization to talk about how to tap into your strengths and help you bring out your very best. I want to inspire you to be inspired so you can take that first step into a larger world. Thanks as always to our Coffee with Kenobi sponsors, especially MEI and Mouse Fan Travel, our travel partner and your one-stop shop for all things Walt Disney World, Disneyland, the Disney Cruise Lines, or anywhere on the planet you want to go on your vacation. Please go to www.coffeewithkenobi.com/mousefantravel to book your magical vacation and help support Coffee with Kenobi in the process. If you like the show, please tweet out that you're listening, share it on Facebook, or invite your friends and family to tune in and share a cup of coffee with us. And if the Force is especially with you, please take a couple of minutes to rate and review the show on iTunes or Google Podcasts. Every review makes a huge difference and helps to spread the word, and I can't thank you enough for your help, for your support, and your friendship. I love so much being a part of this wonderful Star Wars community, and I can't thank you enough for all that you do for me and Coffee with Kenobi. So it's been so much fun, of course, to talk about Infested with both of you. Mary, thanks so much. You did an amazing job as your first official time on Coffee with Kenobi, but there was no doubt in any of our minds. You're such a wonderful leader and a good person to follow on Twitter. You're so engaging in Facebook, and we thank you for all you do for Star Wars and fandom. Where can people reach out to you if they want to continue the conversation with you?
Well, Twitter is probably the best place to do it, and it's just at Mary_Perdue, and it's Perdue like the chicken, Perdue, not the university. So that's what I always try to tell people. Yes. And of course, Facebook on our CWK Coffee with Kenobi and the Alliance page. I'm always trying to put things on there as well. But just my personal Facebook is just Mary Perdue.
Love it. That. Well, that's so good. And again, be sure to follow Mary. She's a lot of fun. Speaking of a lot of fun, of course, Tom, let everybody know where they can find you and all of your musings and meanderings in the world of popular culture. Yes,
I do muse and meander from time to time. Yes, you can find me on Twitter at Draftline, DRAFTLINE. And you will find me usually commenting on things in the Alliance. I don't post a whole bunch in there, but I do try to get in and jump on people's conversations there. And then you can also find my musings and meanderings on my blog, Seeking Positivity in the Galaxy.
Is that going to show up on a Tom Gross t-shirt, Musings and Meanderings?
I think it should.
Okay. Good deal.
Get Corey working on that.
That's right. Come on, Corey. Let's go, buddy.
This podcast is not endorsed by the Walt Disney Company or Lucasfilm Limited. It is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com. Star Wars, all names, sounds, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Disney and their respective trademark and copyright holders. All original content of this podcast is the intellectual property of Coffee with Kenobi unless otherwise indicated.
This is the podcast you're looking for.